On Daf Yomi Aleph, we're 7 lines into the page. Yesterday the Gemara went through the layout of the menorah. We actually said that it was 18 tefachim tall. So Amar Rav, Goiva shel menorah tisha tefachim. Rav said something very strange, which is that he said that the height of the menorah was actually 9 tefachim. Now, besides for the fact that we already went through and we proved that it was not 9 tefachim, the issue is very simple. 9 tefachim is not very tall. It's under 30 inches. And 35 inches the most. And the problem is there were steps leading up to the menorah. So you don't need steps leading up to the menorah for 9 tefachim. Says the Gemara, Eisvei Rav Shimi bar Chiya Rav. Rav Shimi bar Chiya asked Rav, Evan ha'is lefnei menorah by shalosh ma'ila shaleh ha'kohen oimin ha'meitav v'saneris. That there were 3 steps that led up to the menorah that the kohen would stand on when he would clean out the menorah. If the menorah is 9 tefachim tall, you don't. It's everyone's less than your own height. You don't need steps. Even, by the way, 18 tefachim is not that tall either. It's 4.5 feet, but at least you might need steps to be mative to get into it. But 9 tefachim is a pella. So they asked Rav, how could you say it's 9 tefachim? So Amar lei shimiyat. So Rav said, you're Shimi, you're the great Shimi that I heard so much about. No. Ki kamina misvas kan malamayla. What I meant was it's 9 tefachim from where the branches begin to extend. Meaning, it's 9 tefachim till the middle point, and then from where the branches extend, it's 9 tefachim up. I don't know how he was supposed to figure that out, but that's what he... Because then it's double the height. It's double the height. It's 18 tefachim. That's the point. That's the answer. That's how tall it was. Okay, regarding the menorah of Shlomo HaMelech, it says, V'haperech v'haneres v'hamokichem zovhu mikleis zahav. It was made of gold with finishing gold. What do you mean mikleis zahav? My mikleis zahav, Am Rav Ami, this was the highest quality gold that Shlomo had, and he used all of the high quality closing gold. He closed out his storehouse of gold to make the menorahs. The menorahs were the highest quality gold that Shlomo HaMelech could make. Dam Rav Yudam Rav, Esa menorahs asa Shlomo HaMelech made 10 menorahs, v'chalachas v'achas, and each one was refined to such a purity level that hevila elef kikar zav. He brought 1,000 kikar of zav, v'chinisa elef pamim likur, and he kept on putting in it 1,000 times into the kiln to refine it more and refine it more and refine it more. V'hamidu al kikar. So that last kikar zav of gold that made the menorah, it went through 1,000 refinery processes to go from 1,000 kikars to a kikar. Says the Gemara, okay, very high madrega of gold, and that's all the gold that Shlomo HaMelech had. Eini, is this true? You're telling me that Shlomo HaMelech used up all the gold to make the menorah? V'aksiv, it says, V'chol kli mishka melech Shlomo zav, V'chol kli beis yarel v'ene zav sagur, Ein kasav nechsha b'mei Shlomo l'muma. The pasuk says there was so much gold in the warehouses of Shlomo that silver was meaningless because there was so much gold. What do you need silver for when there's that much gold? So the point is, how could you say that he finished up his gold? There was a lot of gold left over after the building of the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara says like this. The Gemara answers, Zav sagur kamira. There was a lot of gold, but this refinery level of gold, this level of pure gold, that was it. He used that Zahav Sagur that he used to build the menorah. The Gemara just has a quick question, which is that you said that it goes from 1,000 kikar. He put 1,000 kikar into the stoves, to the kilns, 1,000 times, each time going down a kikar until he ended with a kikar. So 1,000 kikars to 1 kikar. The problem is does that how refining works? The Gemara says, Vatanya Rav Yossi bar Yehuda Omer. Ma'isa v'ha'isa menorah beis hamikdash yisera shel Moshe b'dinar zav karker dinikini. They once weighed the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, and they realized it was 1 dinar too heavy. And it has to be a kikar. It was 1 dinar too heavy. So what do? Hechnisu shmainim pamim likur. They put it into the kiln 80 times just to go down a dinar. So the ratio is off. You're telling me 1,000 times to get to 1 kikar. It means it goes down a kikar at a time, which is a lot. But I thought that it took them 80 times to go down a dinar. So what's going on? So the Gemara answers, Kivan to Kai Kai, which is anyone who's lost weight understands this. The beginning weight goes real fast. And then once you hit like the body's optimal weight, then what would, like in the beginning, you'll drop 5 pounds a week, and then it's an ounce. So too it is with the gold. In the beginning, it'll go down a kikar at a time because there's a lot of excess, unrefined aspects of the gold. But once it hits that point where it's already kimat a kikar, then you have to put it in potentially 80 times to go down a dinar. Okay. The Gemara says, Amrav Shmuel Bar Nachmani Amrav Yonason, Ma'idchsiv al HaMenorah HaTahira. Today's daf is mostly a Agadata, and the Gemara says that it says regarding the Menorah HaTahira, the pure Menorah. What do you mean, pure? What's the alternative? So what does it mean, Tahira? Sheyardu Maseha Mimakum Tahara. That it was shown from a tahar place, i.e. Shemayim. This is the reference, the famous medrash, that Moshe Rabbeinu had a hard time envisioning what the menorah would look like and how to make it. And it was made from Shemayim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed in Shemayim, Moshe Rabbeinu, the imagery. So Tahara, it came from that place of purity called heaven. So here's the problem though. You're telling me that every time it describes something in the Mishkan as Tahira, that's what it means, that it's an imagery? I get it. The problem is it says by the Shulchan Tahira. Now, the Shulchan is not complicated. You want to say the menorah is complicated because it's got flowers, it's got goblets, it has to be hammered out of one sheet. Okay, you tell me Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know how to make a table. The Shulchan is a table. By the way, the only reason why the Shulchan looks complicated when you look at the pictures is because it has the framework and the loaves of bread on top of it. The actual Shulchan looked a little bit like this. It's a table. So Moshe Rabbeinu, so it says Tahira by Shulchan also. So that also means that it comes from high. It's not the pshat. So what's the pshat? So we have this in a different place, that Tahira means that it's susceptible to Tumah. Meaning, it's a kli that's roy l'kabel Tumah, but it happens to be Tahar. That's how we touch up Shulchan. That when it says Tahira by Shulchan, it means that the Shulchan is susceptible to Tumah because it's a Kli, and it's Tahar because it happens to not be Tumah, but it's a Roy L'Kabel Tumah. So say the same thing by the Menorah. Maybe Tahira does not mean that it was shown from heaven, but rather it means that it's Roy L'Kabel Tumah. The same way you touch up Shulchan, why not touch up the Menorah that way? The Gemara speaks it out. Ela meyat ela Shulchan atar. Shiardu masam katar. Ela tar mechlal shu tameh. Hachanami. Why not say the same thing by the menorah? And the answer is very simple. The reason why we said by the Shulchan Tahar means that it's roy l'kabel tumah. What's the chiddush in that? It's a table. Why wouldn't a table be roy l'kabel tumah? I don't know the laws of tumah that well, but I know that tables can become tameh. I'll tell you why. The rules of tumah and tahara are very unique when it comes to wooden utensils. And one of the rules of wooden utensils is that if you have a kli that is not meant to be moved, it's meant to be stationary, and it's wood, it's not roy l'kabel tumah. Never. So if you're tameh, you touch it, it's not tameh. Only wood. So let me ask you a question. So why is the shulchan roy l'kabel tumah now? Did they ever move the shulchan? I thought if it's stationary, it's not roy l'kabel tumah. The reason why the pasuk has to say tahira, that it's roy l'kabel tumah, is because they would move the shulchan 3 times a year by oil regel. They would lift the shulchan up with all the bread to show all the Jewish people that came, roy chibaschem lefnei hamokim, look how cherished you are in the eyes of Hashem, as we're going to see in a moment, because they would show that there was a miracle that took place with the shulchan, that the loaves were fresh 7 days later, and they lifted up the shulchan to show them. So because the shulchan was moved 3 times a year, it's no longer stationary, and it's roy l'kabel tumah. That's why the pasuk needs to say tahar by the shulchan. But the menorah, there would be no necessity for the pasuk to tell me it's roy l'kabel tumah. Of course it's roy l'kabel tumah. It's a metal golden vessel. Why would it not be? Meaning, it says the word tahar by both shulchan and menorah, but by menorah we're saying the word tahar means that it was shown from Shemayim, but by shulchan not, because I'll tell you why. The menorah is complicated, and it's simple to roy l'kabel tumah. Therefore, the only pshat is it was shown from heaven. The shulchan is actually something that should not be makabel tumah. It's only makabel tumah because of this medrash that they moved it 3 times a year because it's a wooden item that's stationary. Therefore, I need the pasuk to say no, it's roy l'kabel tumah. So therefore, it's the same word but 2 different drushes because each item it makes more sense to darshan in a different way. So says the Gemara, Bishloim Ahasam, Kid Rish Lakish Tam Rish Lakish, Maidichsev Al Shulchan Atar. Rish Lakish says, what does it mean Shulchan Atar? Mechlal Shu Tameh, that it's roy l'kabel tumah. But Rish Lakish has Sakasha, Kli Eitz Ha'osi L'nachasu. But it's a wooden utensil that's stationary, and wooden utensils that are stationary, V'chol Kli Eitz Ha'osi L'nachas in l'kabel tumah. It's not roy l'kabel tumah. So why is it roy l'kabel tumah? Elam Elamid, because of the following medrash. Shemagvi and Oisel Eil. They would lift up the Shulchan 3 times a year for Eil Regel, Marin Lehem Lechem upon him, to show them the showbread. So they would open up the doors and they would go to the azar and they would lift it up so that all the Jews would be able to see the bread, and they would say to them, look how cherished you are before Hashem. That was the message. Not what are you going to do, Yom Adin? Yeah. So they
So they only saw the
Well, obviously the lechem aponim is in the heichal, so the only ones who can enter the heichal are the few kehanim. No one else could see it, right? The heichal. And by the way, and it's not like you could see in. I mean, the doors were open, but even that you couldn't necessarily, even unless he's standing right there.
Once a year,
3 times a year. I'm sorry. Saw the showbread. They lifted it up, said every man, woman, and children in the Azar and the Ezras Nashim, everyone can see the showbread. And what do they say? What's the chibaschem? How are we so cherished? How do you see it from the showbread? There was a great miracle that took place at Lachem Aponim. That when they removed it a week later, it was as fresh. To show that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's like a miracle just to show the Hashem's warmth for Klal Yisrael. Shenemar lo sum lechem lechem cham b'yomi lekachai. So that's why the word tahar by l'sholchan is to tell you that it's royal l'kabel tumah, because you wouldn't think so, because you would think it's stationary. Over here, I wouldn't need the pasuk to tell me that the menorah is makabel tumah. Of course it's makabel tumah. It's a metal utensil. Of course it's makabel tumah. Why would I think not? Rather, tahar in this case means that it came from a tahar place, meaning that it was shown to Moshe Rabbeinu from Shemayim. And the Gemara speaks that further. Tanya Rav Yosef bar Yehuda Oren shal eish, an ark of fire, shulchan shal eish, a table of fire, menorah shal eish, and a menorah of fire, Yordim in Shemayim, went down from Shemayim. V'roa Moshe v'asakamoisam. Moshe saw them and actually made like them. So by the way, according to this, the shulchan was actually apparently complicated because it said a shulchan shal eish came down and Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Oh, that's how you make it." I don't know. It's interesting. The Gemara says, "Shenemar." How do I know that Hashem showed Moshe Rabbeinu sort of like a fiery image of what it should look like? Because the pasuk says, "Yireh va'asei kitavni sam asher tameh bahar." Make according to their form that were you shown on the mountain. So kitavni sam means that I showed you the form. So here's the kasha. So it says the Gemara, Elamayata v'akimoises a mishkan kimishpat esharisim bahar. So there's another pasuk. The pasuk says you should make the mishkan like I showed you in the mountain. Does that mean that Hashem showed Moshe a fiery mishkan also? You're telling me that when it says it's a very similar pasuk. So does that also mean that Hashem showed Moshe the imagery of the entire mishkan? Hachanami. So Gemara says no. Hacha ksiv kimishpatai. Hasam ksiv kitavni sam. When it says kimishpatai, mishpat are laws. Hashem didn't show Moshe the imagery of the Mishkan. He showed Moshe the laws of the Mishkan. He taught him the laws during the 40 days when he was on the mountain. But over here it says kitavni sam. Tavni sam are not laws. Tavni sam are forms. Hashem showed Moshe the forms of these kelim. Says the Gemara weiter, Rav Chi bar Rabbi, Rav Yochanan, Gavriel Chagar Kimin Pesikya. Gavriel he looked like he was wearing like a workers, like a blacksmith have these aprons. So Moshe Rabbeinu saw Gavriel with like an apron on. The Herolei LaMoshe Maisa Menorah. And Gavriel showed Moshe Mamish how the menorah should be made, how it should be hammered out b'chulei. How do I know this? Because it says Vizeh Maseh Menorah. Vizeh means this, like you could point to it. Vizeh. So Moshe Rabbeinu, it was pointed to Moshe like Gavriel pointed, Vizeh. And any time the Gemara is going to say it says Vizeh, that means that Moshe Rabbeinu was a little bit confused on his madrega of whatever, something confused Moshe Rabbeinu as to why, as to what it should look like. And Moshe Rabbeinu was shown the imagery of the item. Says the Gemara, just a question that Tysus is bothered by it. Okay, fine. We'll get to it in a second because the Gemara says there were 3 things. There were 3 things that Moshe Rabbeinu was confused about. I thought that one of them would be the Machzah Shekel, because that's right. Parsha Shkolm is coming out. It's this Shabbos, right? Machzah Shekel, the famous medrash that everyone quotes, is that Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't sure what the Machzah Shekel would look like, and a Matbeya Shel Eish came down. So it's not in the list. So I just saw that Tysus is bothered by this, and Tysus says that's different. Over there, Moshe Rabbeinu knew it would be a coin. Maybe he was confused as to how a Machzah Shekel can fix the egel, or the size of the coin. But he knew this. He did not know how to make these things at all, or how these items, like what the halachas are b'chalal. So it's a madregas of confusion. The Gemara says, there were 3 things that were difficult for Moshe to understand until Hashem Kaviyachol showed with his finger. Menorah, Rosh Chodesh. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know what does the sliver of the moon look like when you declare it Rosh Chodesh, and shratzim, which type of creepy crawly animals are metama and which are not. Interesting that's the third on the list. Each of them have the word vizeh. The Gemara says, "Menorah d'chsiv v'zeh maseh menorah, Rosh Chodesh d'chsiv hachodesh hazeh lachem, and Shratzim d'chsiv v'zeh lachem atamei." Okay. V'yesh oimrim af hilchos shchita, and some say even hilchos shchita, meaning what part of the neck you can shech, what part of the neck is beyond. Right? There's different sections you have to find. There's the bones and there's and a cartilage. There's cartilage circles, and you have to go in between the circles. There's a spot to do it. So Moshe Rabbeinu was unclear where to do it. Shenema v'zeh asher tasa al mizbeach. Okay, good. New topic. Now this topic is going to take us, I think, for the next 11 days into safras, staffers, and tefillin, mezuzahs. So this actually, by the way, this if you don't look at Art Scroll, the Tosfos actually has a lot of pictures that are very, very helpful. Now, if you actually want to see what a lot of the letters in the Sefer Torah. So the Gemara says like this: Shtei parshiyos mezuzah makvin zeh. You need both parshiyos and mezuzah. If you write one parsha not yoytza, and even missing one letter, if one letter is pasul, the mezuzah is pasul. So Gemara says pshita, isn't that pasha? Well, you think you can miss a letter? Why would you think you can miss a letter? If you're missing a letter, it's not the parsha. So the Gemara says Amar Rav Yehuda Marav leinitzach lekutza shel yud. It means the point of the yud. The yud, according to the Rosh, goes up at the top. It means if that little pintel yid, that point of the yud, is removed, it is pasul. Oh. No, the point is if that little point of the yud is removed, it's possible. So says the Gemara, meaning that's the chiddush, that if the missing, it's not missing the whole letter, it's missing a part of the letter. So says the Gemara, Hanami pshita. But then it's not the letter. I don't say it's pashut. You're telling me that if the letter is missing, it's possible. Even if it's not missing, just part of it's missing. Yeah, part of it's missing. It's not the same letters. It's also pashut. So the Gemara says, Al-Kidach de Rabbi Yehuda Marav, Dam Rabbi Yehuda Marav, Kol ois she'ein gvil mukifla ma'arba ruchayseh psula. What it means is, you have the perfect letter, but it's touching the next letter, that's also pasul. It has to be surrounded by klaf, by parchment on all four sides, and if it's touching the next letter, that's also a problem. Says the Gemara, Omer Ashi and Bar Nidvach Meshmei de Rabbi Yehuda, Nikiv Teichai Shalhei, kosher, Yerechai pasul. So Teichai Shalhei, what is Teichai Shalhei? So Rashi brings down two pshat. We're going to go with the second shot of Rashi. Picture a hay. So you got the right angle, and then you have the leg on the left. If there's a puncture in the middle of the letter, in the airspace, in the white part in the middle, that's kosher. But if there's a puncture in the leg, Yerechai, in its right leg, then it's pasul. Okay. Meaning a puncture is like a break. It's like, it separates the letter. So Rav Zera, Rav Zera said the following explanation. Rav Yaakov Amar, the Rav Yehuda, Nikiv Teicha Shalei Kosher, Yerechai, Im Nishtar by Kashir Ois Kitana Kosher V'Mlav Pasul. Very interesting. So you have the right leg of the hay. If there's a puncture in it, we said it's pasul, a hole, puncture in it. Now we're saying no, it's not so pashut. It depends how far down the puncture is. Picture the hay is, let's say, the leg of the right leg of the hay is an inch. If the puncture is at the very top, then it's a problem. But if the puncture is at the bottom, where above the puncture to the top, there's the size of a yud, so it still has the size of a yud, then it's kosher. Because it still has a full ois remaining. It's not the right letter? No. That's the halacha. Okay. Says the Gemara Vaiter, Igra Chamua de Rav. Now, by the way, that's the halacha of the Gemara, not necessarily how we paskin. Igra Chamua de Rav Abba. Go to the next page. Ifsali Karaya de Hey, de Am Benikva. In his tefillin, on the letter Hey of the word Ha'am, it was split by a hole. Also, come to Rav Abba, mamish this halacha. So, Amar Le, Im Nishtar by Kashira is Katana Kshera. If from the hole upwards to the top of the hay, there's the size of a yud, then it's kosher. But if not, then it's a problem. Rami bar Tamni ahu chamua de Rami bar Dekule. Same case. Rami bar Tamri, who was the father-in-law of Rami bar Dekule. By the way, notice he married his father-in-law, had the same name. He was a makban of Yudah Chassid. Ifsika la karai devav deviyarog. Well, Rami, and both are Ramis. I guess I'm saying this is obviously, they weren't makbid before Rav Yudah Chassid on Rav Yudah Chassid. But the truth is, the story goes on that his tefillin had a split in it, so maybe, I don't know. Oh, that's true, they just spell it differently. One's with an aleph, one's without. Okay, maybe that makes a difference. If Sakala Kara Devav Deviyaharoig Benikva, in his tefillin, it says Vayaharoig, the Vav of Vayaharoig had a split in it. So asl kamid, so it's the same halacha. If above the split there's still a yud, then it's kosher. But if not. But this is the halacha. Asl kamid Rav Zera. Amar le zil aisi yunuka deloy chacham v'loy tipish. Ikar le v'yaroi kosher v'iloi yeharig hu v'pasel. Meaning, the problem was like this. There was a split in the letter, but above it there was the size of a yud. But the issue is, it's only kosher though if it still looks like a vav. If it looks like a yud, then it looks like yahyarog. It doesn't look vahyarog. So the problem is, even this split, you have to make sure that the letter still looks like the original letter. So what do? This is the halacha. You bring a child who's not wise and not foolish, and you bring a child who can read Hebrew, but he doesn't know the halachas, and you ask him, read the word. Which is, by the way, this is what it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch to do this. You bring a child and ask him to read the word. If he reads the word as vayaroig, it's still kosher. If he reads it as yaroig, then it's possible. One of the most famous midrashim in all of Shas begins now. Arguably up there in it's a top 5 in all of Shas. It's a pella because there's so much to talk about it, but we're not going to talk about any of it. But look into this on your own because it's fascinating. Rav Yehuda Merav. Look into this on your own because it's fascinating. On your own. On your own time. Yeah. Rav Yehuda Merav. B'shah sha'ala Moshe l'marim. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shemayim to receive the Torah, Matzah Baruch Hu found Hashem sheyoshev v'koisher k'sarim lo'osis, that he was writing crowns on the letters. Amr lefanov, as we know, a lot of the letters they go up. They have tagin, ksharim that go up. Amr lefanov Rabbeinu shalom mimakav v'yadcha. So Moshe Rabbeinu said to Hashem, "Why are you doing this?" Amr loi adam echad yesh, because there's going to be a man shasad liyos b'soif kamadaris that's eventually going to be born v'Akiva ben Yosef Shemai, and his name is Akiva, the famous Rav Akiva shasad lidrash al kol kates tilin shalachas. That he's going to darshan on every letter, on every kates, every crown on top of the letter, piles and piles of halachas. So I'm doing this for him. So Amr lefana of Rabbeinu Shalom Hareyuli. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, "I'd like to see this neshama called Rav Akiva." So Amr lechazay lecharechos. He says, "Turn around," and he's giving shir right now. Cholach v'yoshev b'soiv shmona sharis. He found Rav Akiva in Rav Akiva's shir. Moshe Rabbeinu sat in the back. He sat behind 8 rows. This is a pella. Moshe Rabbeinu did not understand what was going on in the shir. He couldn't follow it. So Toshash Koicha, he started to get sad. Kivan Shegil Davrecha, but they got to a certain topic in the shir, and Amalei Talmida, the students asked Rav Akiva, Reb Menaylach, how do you know this? Amalei, Halacha LeMoshe Messinai. It's Halacha LeMoshe Messinai. Oh, Nisyash V'daita. Then he got happy. By the way, there's obviously a lot of depth to this. Rav Wolfson talks about how Rav Akiva is B'chinas ben Chavera, Moshe is ben Makim, and the kesher is what makes every Jew unique. And Moshe Rabbeinu had a hard time connecting to that. Rav Akiva didn't. But I will say this though: there's a Drashas Haran. The Ran says that you see, Rav Zelik used to quote this, that you see from this that Moshe Rabbeinu was not told every halacha on Har Sinai. He was told the rules, the Yud Gimel Midah, Shatar and Dresha spent to get to that point. So therefore, they're saying all these halachas, and Moshe Rabbeinu said, I don't know any of this. And then they said, but how'd you get to that conclusion? Oh, halacha Moshe Messinai, meaning a kavachomer, gzereshava, Moshe Rabbeinu said, okay, fine, that I get. But there's a lot of depth, because Pashtus, Moshe Rabbeinu was taught every single halacha that will ever be taught, and obviously how do you reconcile with this sugya is not for now, but it's a big topic. I'm sure of Surli Bornstein, by the way, I'm sure he is going to go through this stuff very well. So Chaz Baruch HaNekadosh Baruch Hu Amlach Han Rabbanu Shalom Yesh Lach Adam B'Kazuv Atenoisin Torah Al Yadai. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, so why not give the Torah to Rav Akiva? Why are you giving it through me? Give it to Rav Akiva. So Amar Loi Shtoik, quiet. Kach Ala Machshav Lefana. I'll turn this car around. This is my machshava. This is what I want. And the famous end to the story, I want to see how he ends. What is the end of his life? Sitting, amongst Talmidim. I'm sure there's a lot of kavod. So, he saw Rav Akiva was tortured to death. This is the schar. This is the Torah, and this is the schar. Quiet. This is my machshava. Okay, Amarava, Shiva Oisias Srichin Shloisha Zivonim. 7 letters have 3 tagim on top. That the letters have 3 tagim. If you look at Tosfos shows 3 different approaches as to how the tagim are formed on the Zayin. By the way, we paskin all of these are kosher, but these are the differences between, you have 3 different ksav, you have ksav Ari, ksav Beis Yosef, and ksav Valish. They call this. So I'm sorry, the Gemara says the 7 letters that you have 3 tagim are Shatnez gates. So Shin, Ayin, Tes, Nun, Zayin, Gimel, Tzadi, on those 7 letters, you have the 3 tagin. Rav Ashi, Chazinu l'safrei devaka debe Rav. I saw the seifrim of Yeshiva of Rav, the chotshrilu gage the ches, that the ches went up on top. Also look at Tosfos. Tosfos brings down two approaches. Either it means that on the left side it goes up, but we paskin like the second shot, which is that a ches is like two zions with a pointed roof, and the ches it goes up. So why did they do that? So he says v'tolei l'krai the hay, and also he noticed that the hay has a leg that's sort of floating. So the ches has a pointed roof, and the hay is a floating leg. So why is that? So he says, Kaloimar, Chayhu Berume Shaloilam. You have a ches with a pointed roof. He said this to Gemaras. The ches with a pointed roof. The pointed roof is like a yud. Ches and yud is chay, because Hashem is living above high. He's living on the highest point. He's living in Shemayim. The tolik krai the hay, but why is the letter of the leg of the hay floating? Why is it suspended? So this we'll get to in a moment. But the Gemara says, Kideboy minei Rav Yehuda Nasim Rav Ami. This is because Rav Yehuda Nasim asked Rav Ami the following question. My dichsiv, bitchu ba'Hashem adei ad, ki b'ka Hashem tzorei lomeh. Trust in Hashem forever, because in God, Hashem is the strength of the world. What does this mean? So it says the Gemara Amar Lei, but we'll get to the hay, floating hay in a minute. Trust in Hashem forever, in this world and the next. What do you mean? What's the kasha? The pasuk is pretty obvious. Amar Lei, anohachi kamina. My question is, Ma'isha d'chsiv ki b'ka, v'lo ksiv ka. Why does it say b'ka and not ka? It should say trust God, not in God. Trust in God. What does it mean, trust in God? So the Gemara says, Yud and K, obviously hey, but I don't like to say Yud and K are not just Hashem. It's a description of the two worlds. So trust in Hashem during those two worlds. What are those two worlds? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba, Echad b'Kei ve'Echad b'Yud. One world was created with a Hey, and one world was created with a Yud. Ve'eni adayim Olam Hazeh Olam Haba b'Yud ve'Olam Hazeh b'Kei, im Olam Hazeh b'Yud ve'Olam Hazeh Haba b'Kei. And I don't know which one is which. I don't know if this world is Yud and the next one is Hey, or vice versa. So Kishuomer Eila Teidas Hashemayim va'aretz bihi baram. Al tikri baram ela behei baram. The way you read is when Hashem created the world is behei baram. Hashem created the world with a hey. So this world is hey, and the next world is yud. Why is this? So it's back to the same question. Why is it that the hey has a leg that's suspended, that's floating? Have you ever mazeh behei va'olam haba b'yud? Ne'iman never olam mazeh behei b'bnei shadoyim alak sadra shekol haroitz alotzeis yetze. What happens at the bottom of the hay? It's open. You fall out. You want to fall out of this world? Meaning, a person wants to do Averis? Go ahead. Hashem gives free will. You want to fall out of the bottom? You could fall out of the bottom. Or you could hang out on top. So says the Gemara, okay, so why is it the leg is suspended? Because I'll tell you why. When the leg is suspended, there's space above the leg that you could come back. So the bottom is open, you could fall out, but you could always climb back. So let me ask you a question. Why can't you just climb back from the bottom? Right? The bottom is open, so you could fall out. But above the letter, there's a space for you to come back. Why can't you crawl back from the bottom? So it says the Gemara, V'layel Bahach, the answer is Lo Mistaya Milsa. The answer is because doing tshuva is not an easy thing, and Hashem wants to help you. And therefore, He's giving you multiple spaces, because if you just had the bottom space, it's very hard to do tshuva from the same place you fell out in. So Hashem wants to give you alternative. He closes the door, but He opens, that's perfect, He closes the door, but opens the windows. Says the Gemara, Hashem gives you choices. You want to do Averis, He'll allow that. You want to do tshuva, He'll help you as well. Rish Lakish also a good point. Rish Lakish Mamish is the symbol of tshuva. Umay time is like taga, and why is it that the hay has a tag that it goes up on top? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu like a little crown. Ani koishalei keser. Because if you do tshuva, I'm going to give you a crown. It won't be embarrassed by that point of your life, but that'll become your crown. So this world is created with a hay. So how come the next world is connected to the letter yud? Because the next world, think about how many people are on planet Earth. There's 7 billion. How many people go to Olam Haba? Statistically. a very, very small amount. A yud is a tiny, tiny letter, because the percentage of the people that go from olam hazeh to olam haba is dafka yidden. And yidden are a very small percentage. It's a letter yud. It's very, very small. Says the Gemara, and why is the top of the yud bent down? This pashtus is the right leg. That the right leg of the yud goes down. So why is the right leg of the yud? It doesn't just end; it goes a little bit downward. So the Gemara says, because tzaddikim who are in olam haba, they're very humble, and whenever they see other tzaddikim, they're like, "Oh, he's much more chashuv than I am." And then they go to the next room and they say, "Oh, he's much more chashuv than I am," because it's humble. The letter yud goes down at the bottom, humility. Because every tzaddik in olam haba sees the next tzaddik and say, "Oh, that's a big tzaddik. I'm getting a bracha from him." And then they go to the next one and say, "Oh, that's a big tzaddik. That's a big tzaddik." The Gemara says, "Amar Rav Yosef." Okay, what I want to do is like this. I know that I could stop here because I heard some Daf Yomi stop here. I want to just go 2 more minutes, if you don't mind. It'll make it easier tomorrow. Amar Rav Yosef, Hani Tarti Mili Amar Rav Bisvarim. There were 2 halachas that Rav told me about Safras. We're only going to do the first one today. Tomorrow we'll do the second one. What are those halachas? Vitanya Tuyufte. But I found the brayso that Rav is incorrect. What's the first one? Chada Hada Amar. Sefer Torah sheyesh by shtei toyis b'chol daf the daf yitakin shalosh yiganes. If you have a Sefer Torah that has in one column 2 mistakes, you could fix it. 3 mistakes, we don't fix it. Geniza. Now, by the way, the Gemara is going to point out what type of mistakes is. I'll just say this outside now. The mistakes that we're talking about is not extra letters. Extra letters are very easy to remove. You just remove them. The problem is we're talking about it's missing letters. So what do you do if you write a document, like old school where you're typing, the typewriter, and you're missing a letter? So what do? You have to write it. Yeah, you have to write it. You have to write it and smush it in. You do that 2 times where you're smushing in letters. Okay, it's not so terrible. 3 times, it looks terrible. We're not doing this 3 times. If there's a column that has 3 mistakes like this, Geniza, the whole Sefer Torah. Says the Gemara. So why is this? Why Rav taught this halacha? But he said I found the brayso that he's incorrect. What's the brayso? Because Rav said you fix 2, you don't fix 3. The tiyufta de Rav, because it says tiny tiyufta, shalish yitakin avi yiganis. Because the brayso says you could fix 3, you don't fix 4. Okay, fine. But just about these halachas, just to finish up. Tana, im yesh by daf achashleima matzel kolkule. I don't understand this, but let's say you're going through and he gets a column that has 4 mistakes. You don't fix 4 mistakes. Put the whole geniza. But if there's a column that's perfect anywhere in the Sefer Torah, then you could fix any column that has 4 mistakes. Meaning, 4 mistakes you don't fix if every column has 4 mistakes. But if there's one column that's perfect, then it saves the entire Sefer Torah. Says the Gemara, but this is only true if each column has less than 5 or 6 mistakes. Meaning, one column is perfect. Dan, we'll do 1 minute. One column is perfect, then you'll be able to fix the 4 mistakes, unless the column has 5 or 6 mistakes. If every column has 5 or 6 mistakes, then we throw it out. We do knis and after it. Says the Gemara. So you need one column that's perfect to fix it. Let me ask you a question. 4 mistakes is a problem, but if there's one column that's perfect, then you could fix even the 4 mistakes. What if that one column has 3 mistakes? We said the one column has to be perfect. What if it's not perfect, but it doesn't have 4 mistakes? So says the Gemara, once you could fix 3 mistakes, then it's perfect. Then it's considered perfect. So if it's 4 mistakes, we don't fix. But if there's one column that has less than 4 mistakes, you could fix the entire Sefer Torah. Just to finish up, the Gemara speaks out what I said before. Hani mili chaseris. But this is only true if it's missing letters and you have to shtup the letters in. We don't do that if it's 4 times because it looks terrible. Avi yaseris less lanba. But if it has too many letters, take it out. It could be 20 mistakes. 20 mistakes you could fix. Why? Because too many letters, it'll look fine. You'll just take it out and it won't look terrible. Says the Gemara, Chaser is my timer. Why is it that if it's missing letters, we don't add 4 mistakes? Because because the Sefer Torah will look speckled. Seeing people shtup letters 4 times is it's not very nice looking. Just to finish up, Agra Chamud Rav Abba Havarle Yeseris Besifrei. Agra, the father-in-law of Rav Abba, had too many letters in his Sefer Torah. Also come to Ravami, he says, the same halacha, lo Amr el Chaseris, Aviseris Lasamba. This whole thing that 4 is the max is only when you're missing letters. But if you have too many letters, you could fix it as many times as necessary. Stop it.